from last night, but please forgive me if I don't remember your name, but I definitely remember your faces. I remember you laughing, and that meant a lot that you came out and you laughed with me. So for those of you who don't know who I am a military wife humorist, so I am a motivational speaker, I'm a stand-up comedian, and I wrote a humorous book about being the wife of an infantryman during the initial invasion to Iraq. So when I first wrote that book, and I was being interviewed by people on the radio and the newspaper, they were like, well, who writes a book about that? That's not funny. But those of us who know and have been in this lifestyle for a little while, that if we don't find moments to laugh at, we won't make it. Am I right? So what I wanted to do today and talk to you guys about a little bit today is the focus of my next book that hopefully will be out next year. I'm pregnant and working really, really hard and putting things together. So today I want your feedback. You have a handout. This is a preview to that book. And so I just want you to take your time to work with me. Put your phones on vibrate if you don't mind. I mean, I understand I take notes on my phones. You've got your paper there, so take notes on your paper, but I do understand because I'm a cell phone note person. That's cool. How many of you guys read Confessions? Oh, okay, we're doing good. Awesome. Okay, well, for those of you who didn't, or if you want to buy a copy for a friend, I have copies after, and I have Comedy City. If you didn't come last night, it's got some stand-up comedy if you need a laugh. But for those of you who have not read the book, I'm going to go ahead and give you a little bit of my background and my story. If you hear some of the same jokes that you heard last night, pretend like you didn't and just laugh anyways. Okay. So here's a little bit about my story. The year before I met my husband, I was a Gamecock over at USC, and I was getting my degree in theater, speech, and dance. And at that time, I also was working on average 2 jobs to pay to go to school. And in addition to working, getting my degree, I was also heavily involved in improv comedy, stand-up comedy, and musical theater. I was living the dream. I had a little red Miata and had Calprint seat covers. I thought she was so cute. We called her Mitzi. People would see Mitzi all over Columbia and tell me about it. But anyway, I was just living the dream. I was having a lot of fun, y'all. And I graduated and bumped around with a couple crappy jobs as life goes. But then I finally landed a dream job in sales, and I was traveling a lot, and I was loving life, and I was saving money. I wanted to pay off a little bit of that debt that happens in college, and I thought, I'm going to New York City. I'm going to New York City. I want to be a stand-up comedian. I want to be an actor. I want to go to New York City. Well, that's when I met this good-looking Marine at a fish fry. And you guys know that Marines are the most romantic by nature, don't you? And so he seduced me with all his random statistics about the Marine Corps. And the next thing I know, we're dating. We're in this whirlwind relationship. He was states away. And September 11th happened. And that kind of changed everything for everyone in our nation and really put things into perspective. To be honest, I never wanted to get married. And then I thought, well, if I ever do get married, I won't get married when I'm 30, because that's how we do things now. And then I realized, you know, there's guys you date, and there's a guy you marry. And I knew that John was the man that I wanted to marry, and I realized that sometimes in the military, they determine when you do things that you do. And so he got orders to go to Camp Hunt. And I was living in South Carolina. And he thought, well, this is probably the right time to ask her to marry me and have her give up her sweet tea, her grits, her career, her hobbies. So she would follow me out to the West Coast. And then I'd leave her a whole bunch, go on a bunch of deployments. And so I did it, which was fine. And I wanted to get some advice from my grandmother about what it would be like to be a new military wife. Come on in. Don't be scared. We heard that there's someone escaped ass and everybody's...
I guess it happens all the time.
It does. Put
your cell phone off.
Oh, they
turn on
come up with some
vibrate.
They do try to run away. They always get caught, but
So this
they
is a
come up with
preview to
some
my
really
next
creative
book.
ways to get
So
away
I
with
just
it.
started, so I'm telling my story.
Actually, my favorite
from
one
it.
is where they found a
Act like
Sharpie
cat.
and
Okay.
they colored their
So anyways,
black and then tried to run off.
my grandma gave me
People got
some great
lost.
advice. The best advice she gave me was, don't be fooled by track hair because they don't try and they don't care. So here I was, and I married this guy that I didn't really know, and I'm in a car, and we're doing the Diddy move from hell, from Virginia to California. And I started to think, and really started to freak myself out, especially when I crossed the Mississippi, thinking about, wait a minute, my people don't cross the Mississippi. We don't do this, and what are Californians going to be like? Are they Yankees with suntans? And I got nervous and I got scared, and I tried to psych myself out, but I got myself kind of freaked out, and then we arrived on base, and there's helicopters and tanks and bombs are going off, and you know, my husband, as a grunt, was never around. And true to his word, I think within 2 weeks of getting our base housing, we got our house, and he left and went in the field for like a month. So here I am, having hooked up cable, right? They call us dependents. I'm like, dependent my ass. I have to do everything. And, you know, you're on this new time change, and you moved away from home. I didn't have any hobbies. I didn't have a job. I didn't have any friends. Refused to drive on base, because that shit was scary. And just got to a real funk. You know what I mean? Didn't like it. Didn't like it because it was cactus and tacos. And I don't eat that. Make it with some grits. And pretty soon, after a couple of weeks, I fell into this little routine. And what that was I would stay up all night pouting because he wasn't there. Then I would sleep in, get up at 10 in the morning, watch Unsolved Mysteries, which rolled into Lifetime Movie Network for Women, where Valerie Bertinelli's daughter had a baby with Dean Cain, and then she sold it on the black market. And then I would watch reruns of VR, and then Maury at 2 in the afternoon, and just crying my eyes out. And this went on for weeks and weeks and weeks. I remember one time my husband came home. I said, "There's nothing to do all day." He said, "Why don't you try cleaning?" I was like, "Well, okay." I mean, he didn't mean it to be rude. He was just like, "Really? Okay, it's disgusting here." Okay, so I was a disaster. And I was crying every day. And one day, a girlfriend from back home called me, and I answered the phone, and I was crying. And I tried to hide it, kind of. She said, "Well, what did you expect? Marrying some guy, it's all about him, moving all over the world to some of the most undesirable places, never being able to have a job, always having to get new friends, being far away from your family, and you're doing this all for some guy that isn't even there half the time. I mean, what do you expect you to be doing? No one expects you to be doing anything else. All you have to do is cry." Whoa, come to Jesus, y'all! She thought my life sucked. She thought I was a pathetic victim of a lifestyle that nobody would want. Well, what I realized and what I was ashamed of in that moment is that I was proving her right. And I was living up to that expectation. I started to think about it. Is that what people think of me? Is that what people think about this decision that I made with my life? And I was embarrassed. And have you ever seen those old-fashioned cartoons where there's like a little cartoon character who's about to make a decision, and right when he's about to make a decision, a little devil pops up on his shoulder. And that's what kind of happened when I got off the phone with her. There was a devil on my shoulder. And he was like, "Yeah, that's right, honey. You cry it up. No one expects you to do anything. You just sit there and cry." Because everybody knows that at this time in your life and in the world, being a military wife is the most disconcerting thing you can be. It's challenging, it's hard, it's scary. So honey, you just go ahead and cry. Here's your free pass. And I thought, is that me? And just like in those cartoons at that moment, guess who popped up on the other shoulder? An angel. And the angel's like, "You're right, it's not you." And I realized in that moment I had a choice. That I could listen to the devil on one side, who wanted me to see problems. Or I could listen to the angel on the other shoulder, who wanted me to see opportunities. And so I stopped, and I started to realize my life didn't suck. And even though I had this free pass, because no one would blame me to be a little turner the rest of my life and not get off the couch, cry all the time, not do anything, didn't want it. Because when my husband married me, he married me because I was joyous, because I was a life of the party, because he knew that I could handle the lifestyle. And I was so embarrassed because I was not showing him that at that time. I thought back to my grandmother Ruby, who was my mother's mother, who I talked about last night, who was definitely a character where I get some of my sense of humor from. She soon became my inspiration and my guide. And like me, she came from a small town. 70 years before me, she was a young bride whose husband was going off to World War II. She went on to describe her life as an adventure. Her and my grandfather lived all over the world. They had 7 children, 21 great-grandchildren. When I grew up and I went to their home, and when my mother talked of her life as a child, I heard about adventures from England, Germany, Philippines, and all over the United States. Her dream as a young woman, she was not really an only child. She had a brother that was significantly older than her, many, many years, like over 12 years older than her. So when she was a little girl, she would go visit her cousins, and there were so many people in the house. And her dream as a young girl was that she wanted to grow up, get married, and have a whole bunch of kids. And she made it happen. She also talked to me about when she was a young girl, she loved geography. Now, she was from a town called Toanna in Virginia that's like basically like a tribe. I mean, it is so tiny. But she wanted a life of adventure, and she wanted to get married, and she wanted to have a lot of children. And she made it happen, and she had an amazing life. When John and I were fixing to PCS, we actually stayed with her, and it was so wonderful because my grandfather had passed by then, and for her to see John in his uniform and to see me about